Hey, you guys, I learned something today that I want to share with you, and it hit me. I don't know why I'd never seen it before. One of my favorite stories in the Bible comes from the book of Genesis, but my favorite book of the Bible is actually a follow-up to that story. The stories that I'm talking about are actually the story of Joseph and then the story of Moses. The story of Joseph is special to me because it reminds me a lot of my father's journey here in this country as an immigrant and his journey through his work experience. The story that follows almost immediately after that happens in Exodus. It's the story of Moses as an immigrant, not so much as an immigrant, but as somebody that gets assimilated into the Egyptian culture, dealing with this duality of a culture that he has, being both Hebrew, but also being raised in a completely completely Egyptian culture. I relate to that a lot personally. I'll talk about that more some other time, but I really wanted to share this. I just got finished with prayer meeting here at one of my churches, and I shared this passage because I read through the book of Exodus, and specifically the story of Moses, at least once a year to remind myself of my purpose in life. I invite you, if you don't have a story that you really relate to yet, find it. It'll change your life. It'll give you something to be grounded in and something that you feel relates to you and that you feel that you can always come to where God will speak to you. So I definitely recommend finding that story in the Bible that you feel the most connection to. For today, I just want to talk to you about my personal experience and something that I just shared with my church family that they really seem to enjoy. And it answers the question, how can I develop the same passion that God has for the people around me? Because God is passionate about everyone in a way that you and I may never be able to even hope to have. Well, I think that this story might be the key. I'm excited because as a pastor and as somebody who is excited about the gospel, I'm always looking for a way to share that. And I think that this passage, like I said, holds that first step or that key. So it comes to me from Exodus chapter 3. If you haven't prayed today, now's a great time to pause this video and go ahead and say a quick prayer. Chapter 3 of Exodus says the following. It says, "Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the desert, and he came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire within the bush." Now, we actually know from further reading into this, and we could read the whole passage, we understand that this is actually God himself in the burning bush. Watch this. So he comes down, he's in flames of fire within the bush. Still verse 2, it says, "Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up." This is wonderful because first Moses sees. So Moses thought, I will go over and see the strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. And when the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called him from within the bush. And that's when God said, "Moses, Moses." And Moses said, "Here I am." I think it's wonderful, and I wish for all of us always to remember, before we can be called by God, it seems that the Bible shows this, and I'm going to look into other callings that people have. The other one that comes to mind is Isaiah chapter 6. Before Isaiah got called, he had seen the glory of God. Before Moses is called, he sees something that God is doing, and he approaches him. It's really interesting that Exodus chapter 3 says that when God saw that Moses went to go look, when he saw that Moses was interested in what God was doing, that's when God called him. In other words, I believe that what the Bible is showing me, and I think it could be showing you as well, is sometimes we lack passion for the things that God is passionate about because we haven't seen what he's doing. How can we be passionate about something that we haven't even seen him do? I don't think that God is calling us to have blind faith, and I think this is an excellent example of how he's calling us to see for ourselves empirically, look, I am doing something in your community. I'm doing something in your life, and I'm calling you to be excited about what I'm excited about. When God sees that we look and we see that, when we are interested in what he's doing, then he calls us. Then he gives us a purpose that's bigger than ourselves, a purpose for our lives. The encouragement that I gave to my church family today, literally just a few minutes ago, because I'm recording this on a Wednesday. You'll probably see this on a Friday evening. But whenever you see it, I encourage you to do the same thing I encourage my church family. We got together, We divided according to geographic location. So we have some people that live in a smaller town a few minutes away from here, and those of us who live in the main town, we divided based on communities, and we prayed that God would show us where he's at work. Because I believe that the Bible is very clear. God is at work all around us, but we just don't see it until we ask, until we open our eyes and we try to see with the side of faith that Paul talks about. So I encourage you, if you're lacking purpose, if you feel you've reached kind of this stagnant point in your spiritual walk, ask to see what God's up to. I believe that just like in the story of Moses, just like in other stories of different prophets or even regular people, when we go over to see what God is doing and we witness just what he's up to, we'll be interested. And when God sees our interest, he'll call us to do something. Definitely going to look more into it. I don't want to just be saying something that might not be true in all circumstances, but I definitely see that in that story. One of my favorite stories is the story of Moses in Exodus chapter 3. I hope that's been a blessing to you. If it's not a blessing to you right now, I encourage you to try it and then let me know if that is something that worked for you. I'm interested to hear any sort of experience that you've had with that. Next week, I'm going to meet with my church family again for what we call prayer meeting, and I'll ask them to share. Did you see God? And if you did, what did you see? And do you feel now that God is calling you to do something? So I look forward to see how this develops. I pray that this will be an encouragement to you, as it's been for me. I'm Pastor Eli. I encourage you to read this, and I'll see you next time.